Okay, so the plan with this is to remove the sump, so that way I can do the front and rear main seals, and then seal up the sump properly, rather than trying to just keep the sump on there. So I'll do that. I also have to see if I can fit the extractors, although I'm not sure how they're going to fit with the EFI manifold there, but I'll give it a shot. You know, have to unbolt the supercharger because sadly I can't run that, because this is all sort of happening a bit too quickly to prepare for the supercharger properly. So I'm just going to have to deal with naturally aspirated, but that's alright. Everybody said the EFI version of this motor compared to carby is just fucking chalk and cheese, man. So, you know, with extractors and a nice exhaust system, it should go alright. Should go alright for a van, and it should keep me happy for a while. I also have to swap the thermostat out, swap the alternator, swap the starter, all to the ones off the other motor, swap the dizzy as well, because the dizzy is rebuilt in the other motor. Fit the new filter, the new spark plugs, the new fuel filter, all that shit has to happen. I have to fit the viscous fan, which is just over there on the floor, from the other motor, because I rebuilt the hub on that and it has new fluid in it. This one's a bit loose. What else? Obviously the motor needs a clean. I'll fit the power steering pump, but I won't have a belt on it just yet. And it's a good thing it's the last belt you put on, because I'm not going to have it hooked up, and I would hate to have to remove the other two belts to get a belt on it. But I can't have it hooked up yet because the rack needs some repairs. So once that's repaired and I chuck it in the van, then I'll just put a belt on it. But for now I'll have it all plumbed up, like it's all the hoses are in the van. I just did those, all the pipes, sorry. So power steering lines are in. Everything's in ready for power steering. It's just I've got to get the rack repaired, which will happen in, I don't know, a week or two, maybe a bit longer, we'll see. But yeah, anyway, I'll get this thing ready. So I've decided, since I have to remove the manifold anyway to put the extractors on, which are just there, I might as well do the injector seals. That would be wise. Okay, the intake is off, exhaust is off. The bottom half of the intake is in the parts washer. So I'm just letting that soak for a bit and then I'll go scrub it. Top of the manifold's right there, which also needs a clean, so I'll get onto that. But at the moment I wanted to clean all this up, ready for the new gasket. And then fit the extractors, and then I can fit the bottom piece. Yeah, I really need to clean the block too. Scored new injector seals, so I'll fit those with the rail, slowly but surely. So I'm just cleaning up the motor at the moment. Nothing fancy, just giving it a little scrub so it's not just a dirty fucking lump of cast iron I'm chucking in the van. You can see how gross some of this shit is. Gonna be cleaning it all up. I'll get these dowels out without damaging the gasket face there. There we go. Extractors will bolt on now. Clean the block up a bit too. It's not exactly squeaky, but you know, it's better than having caked on oil everywhere. The front seal's been put in, just got to do the rear, and then the sump on, and slap it all back together and put it in the van. Okay, sump's on. It's not the cleanest thing in the world, but it's fine. At the end of the day, it's going to be in the van. This looks so silly with extractors. I love it. I love it. done for tonight. Gonna go have something to eat for dinner. Well, the injectors are in with the new seals, O-rings, and I think they're called penal caps. The extractors are on and it looks sick. New fuel filter, oil filter. Have to fit the Dizzy from the old motor over there, because that's fully rebuilt distributor. But I'll do that once the motor's running. Pretty happy with it so far. So I'm going to trace it and make a new gasket. Snip, 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 snip. Looking good so far. She's ready to chuck in. Hopefully it all goes well and there's no friggin' issues. We'll see. The engine is actually ready to install. It's just sitting here at the moment because I was about to install it along with the petrol tank and the fuel lines, but there was a bit of an issue with this tank when I pulled the pump out. It's just full of rust and varnish. It's just, yeah, it's fucked. No salvaging that at all. So yeah, that tank is stuffed. But this one I got from one of my favourite wreckers, Just Wrecking Toyota. Great place, they always have good shit lurking about. So I grabbed this. It's to suit a Spacer, which is actually, a lot of people don't know this, it's identical to a Rahgo other than some panelling. They're basically a Rahgo exact same as mine, except with an uglier front end and a bit curvier looking. But the floor pan is the same, the engine compartment's the same, even some of the interior parts are the same. Grab this tank from one. Let's have a look in here. You can already tell that's much cleaner. I've got a new pump to go on that anyway. But yeah, look at that, squeaky. Squeaky. I just need to give it a rinse and then, yeah, it's just, like, come on man, you can't fucking, look at the difference. Look at the difference. So I'm going to chuck this in with the fuel lines and then the motor. Get shit off. Now, we'll get this one in. Yeah, I have no idea how hard it was to get these fucking air fire lines under here, past the fucking handbrake cable, and I managed to get them past the friggin' torsion bar. That was a challenge. But it's in. It's in, I just gotta mount it. Alright, that loom going through that hole there, I have to connect this loom down here too that runs into this doorstep, which is, these have to be connected to that and then mounted, and then mounted all along here under the door as I'm taking the old one out, and it goes right to the tailgate. Here we go. A couple of these clips are pulled out. They normally have that on it, which mounts, they mount to that tab there all along, and a couple of them are torn off of the EFI loom here, so I'm going to nick the ones from here, tape them on, and that should fix it. Alright, this section's in. They're mounted up with clips, but I put cable ties just as like a precaution, I guess. I had to dodgy some of the clips because I can't tape them, obviously. But you know, that's cable ties on that works. Cable tie up there. I've got to put a cable tie up there, and it's in its clip here. So, yep, fuel pump, fuel sender. That goes to the cat. I've still got to do this section all the way back to the hatch though, so I'll do that in a minute. Okay, the tank is now ready to chuck in. So I've got the new fuel pump in here. The fuel line's off of that EFI tank. The sender is out of the old carby tank because I know it works. That, and this is a Spacer fuel tank, which, even though they're basically an identical van, as I mentioned earlier, they have a different wiring system because they were built in the 90s. They're not an 80s vehicle. So this plug wouldn't have worked with the loom that I've got in the van now. The plug on here was different as well because it was to suit a Spacer, so I just had to do some soldering and some shrink wrap and then some tape. So that should do it. One of the rubber pads was missing, so I just nicked it from the carby tank and stuck it on there with some seam sealer just because it was the closest thing I had. It only needs to hold it there in place while I'm putting the tank in anyway. Alrighty, fuel tank's in and hooked up. Now, I know I kept saying over the last couple of days, oh yeah, I'll have the engine in the next day, or in the next 24 hours I'll have the engine in. But every time I say that, I end up running into complications. So I'm not going to say it, I'm just going to do it. Looks like we might have a bit of trouble getting it in with the extractors there. There's not much I can do about that, I'm just going to have to shimmy it in there somehow. Okay, I need to bring it that way a bit. Hitting up here. If I just drop it just a little bit. Okay. There, it's in. There we go. Alright, now I gotta fucking try angle it in with those extractors. Which is very close, very close. It's just slipping the gearbox on is gonna be a bit of a bitch. But the extractors weren't too difficult to handle. They went down where they had to be, alright. The fan, I probably could have done this without the fan, it would have made it shitloads easier. But I didn't hit the condenser anyway, which is nice. Right, after wrestling with the gearbox for a bit and the motor, it's they're finally mated down the bottom there. I've just got to push the engine back like another 2 mil, and then I can drop it on the mounts and put the bolts through and do the bolts on the gearbox. Fuck man, I'm having some lunch. It's bolted in, I just have to do all the fiddly shit now. Hook everything up, put the radiator in, put coolant in, put oil in, hook up the loom and everything, and then we'll give it a crank. That's a problem I didn't think of. The extractors are down here and the exhaust is up there, so I can't just have a bit of pipe go from one to the other. I'm going to have to drive it to an exhaust place. It looks like I'm starting it just straight out the headers. This is going to be interesting. That's my fix for the neutral start switch. Temporary for now. Okay, it's in and it turns over, but it's not starting. It's got spark, something fuel related. So I'm just going to go test the that the injectors are firing. Well, number one anyway. It's the only injector I can get to. And if they're not, then I'm going to, have suspicions that the injector drive could be the issue. But I'll have a suss. Alright, this is going to be loud because it's straight out the headers.